Guys, it's been hinted at throughout the entire campaign, and it looks like it's gonna happen. Undead Paladins and even Blood Elf Druids? What is this? Datamined evidence coming for the next big classes, or I should say race class combinations coming to WoW. Let's check this one out from you-know-who, Doran, the Teller of 1,000 Truths. That's right.
New race class combos keep being confirmed to come in midnight, but it appears that the Blood Elven Druids and Forsaken Paladins so far seem to be the most likely next addition. We datamined a Cat Druid Blood Elven form, we datamined some Blood Elven Druid NPCs, we got the lore of the World 3 of Quotalas.
The Blood Elf Druids, I mean, I think Undead Paladins totally makes sense to me right now. Blood Elf Druids, that one was a bit of a shocker when I read it in the title. I'm like, is he just fucking debating us? Which could still be the case, yeah. Doran sometimes does that. But it actually could make sense considering all of the naturistic shit that's going on right now outside of Silvermoon, right? Where the Dead Scar was healed and everything. You know, who knows? Maybe Blood Elves are going to reattach themselves with nature. They've never been a very nature-y people. They've oftentimes just chased magic for the sake of chasing magic and power and never really cared about the repercussions to nature because of it. But who knows? Maybe we get some nature and tree-hugging Blood Elves out there.
World 3 of Quotalas, the Sunwell storyline, and Blood Elves turning to more magic sources and their old forest spirit heritage. Furthermore, for the Forsaken, I mean, we have Alonso's Foul, the guy that literally invented human paladins, being in the promotional cinematic, actual data.
Can I just say, I know I'm pausing a lot early in this video, but Alonso's Foul is a fucking badass. I knew it when we first saw him in the expansion. I was like, no way, this guy's a legend. Alonso's Foul is appearing in the expansion right now, and then he showed up right in the Lady Liadrin little cutscene cinematic, right? He's just so cool. I think he's like, everything he says is just knowledgeable as shit. He drops great one-liners. He's just a badass. Like, I don't even like the Undead that much, but I just think he's so damn cool. And the way he describes paladins, you know, covering up their like trauma and armor and everything, he's just, I like him a lot.
Information that Undercity and Forsaken will be relevant in 12.1.5, and also data-mined models related to the Holy Order of Forsaken Paladins. So let's check out everything we currently know.
All right.
Anything Warcraft related, Warhammer, Destiny, pretty much any game you can imagine,
you
can get at the best market prices with my link in the description below on Gamivo. On top of that, I got mobile top-up, software, a whole bunch of other things. Even better, if you use my code DORAN,
use the man's code. Weren't there Undead Paladins inside Priory of the Sacred Flame dungeon? Yes. Yes, there were. There were, I don't know if they were necessarily paladins. They might have been, but they were raised by the light, right? They were undead, light forged undead, basically.
Midnight is finally out, and we do have some really interesting information. Out of all the race class combos, these two really seem to be the most likely, but it does seem like they're heavily foreshadowing the Blood Elven Druids in particular, which to someone first glance kinda sounds a bit
sounds like an oxymoron.
Not really related to their theme, but it's actually not at all if you follow some of the more lesser known lore. So to not descend into some madman rambling mental gymnastics of why this is coming, let me open up with the evidence first. A few months back during the Midnight Beta, we had datamined a bunch of new druidic model forms, very much looking exactly how the fans imagine Blood Elven.
Yeah, if there was a Blood Elf cat form, this was totally what it would be. This is what makes sense.
Cat forms will look like. Some of these turned out to be tameable, but that doesn't mean much, as with the new base model, there is so much they can do to just transition it into the playable one. Keep in mind, they originally named this model Druid Cat Legacy, and it had the exact theme for the Eversong Woods, so I really doubt this is a coincidence. Now, with Midnight out, and when combined with the new and established lore, it makes so much more sense. Did you know that originally, Quotalas actually had a world tree called Tassala? Yes, a world tree, just like the Night Elves had, and it existed in the zone until Arthas cut it down in Warcraft 3. Now, that's not the High Elves were druids, but it was magics of the Well of Eternity that actually kind of sprouted this world tree unintentionally. The original settlers of Quotalas were the exiled Night Elven magic users who created the Sunwell through the wilds of the Well of Eternity.
Which is why, like, Blood Elf Druids is such a weird concept, because really the first people who settled in Quel'Thalas, besides, there were the originals, right, the Amani Trolls who were there from the very beginning, and they are currently in their quest line, you know, fighting us on the fact that, you know, the elves came and took their land as settlers. But the elves that did show up, they were not blood elves. They slowly transformed into blood elves over time. But they were originally the kind of non-druidic night elves. They were like the night elves that were kind of rejecting nature and chasing arcane magic and shit. And for night elves, that was like blasphemy. Like, what the fuck are you doing? We're supposed to be sleeping all day, smoking ganja, in touch with the trees and everything. You know what I mean? Like, you've been messing up our nightly orgies with your arcane magic. Get out of here. So they exiled them all, and that's why they ended up where they are now. Now, the thought of them returning to their naturistic, kind of roots, and not to put a pun in there, but that, I guess it could happen. It just seems like anti the way that these guys have thought all along, and the real reason why they got basically banished from Night Elven lands from the very beginning.
Who created the Sunwell through the wilds of the Well of Eternity. However, as the Sunwell was made, the oldest tree of this newfound region took on this energy, which created the eternal spring effect that this entire zone has, especially compare this to Zulaman. It was an important part of their heritage, and this tree was actually here all the way until Arthas invaded Qualtalas, which happened quite recently. He cut it down, and over the roots, Deathholm was created. Now, the Highlands never really had a druidic culture, especially since it was really the druids that...
We have a realm to destroy.
Ominai, thank you for the follow, man. Welcome to our Scourge.
That exiled them in the first place, like Morphurian. They were always focused on arcane, but they did have this original tradition. For example, in the Eversong Woods in TBC, there was a quest of an arcanist that was remembering the old nature and the forest spirits that once existed. And in TBC, we also had High Botanist Freywind from Botanica that used several druidic abilities. Furthermore, Tastora, the legendary bow wielded by Illyria and the ancient heirloom of the Windrunners, was actually created from the bow of this world tree. So the Highlands always kind of flirted with the forest spirits, the world tree, but they never had druidism as the center of their culture.
Right.
Now, before you say we are just kind of grasping at straws here, I mean, just look at all the connections and just tell me this isn't happening. Brand new cat model, the zone was finally restored from the Scourge destruction. We have an heirloom of this world tree wielded by the Windrunners that are like the center of this expansion, with the reunion of the Windrunner sisters foreshadowed. Even more, we know what happens to the Sunwell. Mild spoilers here, but it's spinning away from the light and it's focusing more towards all the other energies. The Blood Elves in this expansion are open to using many more magic sources, as remember, back in the day, they were only focused on arcane, which, when the Sunwell was destroyed, caused terrible withdrawals. Since then, they started building the Fel, they started building the Void, they started building the Light and everything in
That's
between.
right, Omi.
Would reconnecting with their heritage and druidism really be something weird? Especially now with the Harandir playable race in this entire world.
I mean, the Haranir are like the connection between the elves and the trolls, right? I mean, that's what they... And some elf fucked a troll. And it's really an evolutionary change, not necessarily an elf fucked a troll, but you get what I'm saying. They're a connection to nature again. So maybe the elves chatted up with the Haranir and remember their naturistic ways again. That could be a path to this.
Soul and World Tree connection.
Can't blame them, man. Yeah, they're kind of thick, I agree.
Shtick are the World Trees in Harandar. The Haranir are the Troll Elf link. Trolls are connected to nature, and the big story is healing the wounds between the Amani and Quel'Thalas. So I really feel like this entire World Tree of Tazdala could be what concludes the Void Invasion, the Amani Elf conflict, the Elven reunion, and everything in between. It could also be related to the healing of the land that happened prior to this expansion, and when you combine this with the Datamined Cat Legacy Druid forms, it really does seem like this is going to be the next class. Furthermore, I mean, there is more evidence. There is a group of NPC.
There's rumors out there that like a Loon returns too, or something like that, or the Earth Mother, from the Torn. Like, there could be some naturistic gods that return, and yeah, maybe they just say, hey, everybody gets to be a druid now. Now, I think that would take a shit ton of work from Blizzard. In terms of adding any single class to the game for any single race, druids are the hardest ones to do because they got to make animal forms for every single one, right, to fulfill furry fantasies. So when they're doing that, they gotta always think about, okay, if we're adding a druid race, what are their druid forms going to look like? Whereas if you want to add like rogues to another race, well, that's easy. Okay, they already hold daggers, it's fine. They don't got to do anything else. Maybe add some rogue animations to their kit. But other than that, druids are the hardest ones. I'd say maybe shamans would be next. You got to make totems and everything for them. But you get what I'm saying. So with that, I feel like I don't know if druids ever go full bore, like every single race can be druids. Although I've said before, mechanomes, imagine them transforming into different animal forms with the fucking Transformers sound would be absolutely glorious. But I could see it being blood elves. Maybe it's a stretch. But I don't know. These return of these naturistic gods could lead to more people turning to druidism. Who knows?
He's called the Thalassian Wild Shapers, literal blood elves wearing druid tier gear, and they're tending to the forest with the Harnir NPCs, which in my opinion is a huge hint, but we also have the interview from the lead game director from just a few months back saying that the druids are the most difficult class to expand because of the need to create a bunch of new forms and effects, but he especially mentioned the popular requests like the blood elves, druid, like blood elf and druids are the top of their list. So really at this point, I would be confident to say that they have been
Yeah, what would their forms be? I mean, I think we saw what the cat form would look like. It'd obviously be like one of those, you know, lynxy looking, the red tiger boys. And we see them running around everywhere. I can't think about what the other ones, maybe they turn into a mana worm for one of their forms. Maybe that's their flight form is a mana worm, who knows? But there's like a bunch of animals running around Quel'Thalas for sure that are unique to that zone that they could easily transform into. I don't think it'd be very hard for them to imagine it. Not as hard, at least, as like the Kultiran were with their Drust forms. I think that was a more took more creativity.
Soft confirmed. Something else I want to really
Hawks
quickly
Rider,
cover, and I
Boomkin,
already talked about this,
yeah.
but I want to recontextualize this.
Dragonhawk.
And
oh, of course, yeah. What am I saying? A Dragonhawk flight form would be an easy one, no doubt.
that is the very likely revamp of Undercity coming in 12.1.5 with the new Labyrinth Delves that they announced together with the roadmap. We have a few hints. First is the new interview talking about Savannas having a role later down the line in Midnight. The second is the Delve achievement called To Die in Undercity or Lordaeron. And with the Undercity shape, the Labyrinth makes the most sense. Now this is all just to confirm.
So now we're talking about Undead Paladins, which I actually think is much more likely than the Blood Elf Druids.
That Undercity and Forsaken will be relevant, and this plays into what Blizzard already told us. However, for the Forsaken Paladins in particular, we have so much more evidence, even more so than for the Druids. First,
Kalia's just eye candy, I'll be honest, she is.
Alonso's Fowl, the guy that was just in the brand new Midnight Cinematic, is actually the guy that invented the human paladins and the silver hand, and he is a holy priest wielding the light. That is a...
Did he invent human paladins, or did he was a priest, and he talked about how Lady Liadrin was originally a priest too. I don't know if he invented paladins, but he definitely brought a lot of people to the light and invented the silver hand and everything. And then people eventually, you know, put on some plate, grabbed a hammer, and used the light in a different way and became what we know today as paladins.
Forsaken. Second, one of the leaders, Kalia, is a lightbound undead, which furthermore plays into this. Forsaken priests have existed for so long, so them not having paladins never really made any sense.
No, it didn't make any sense.
Half a year back, we discovered a brand new skeletal light horse model, and in the Season of Discovery, we got a new questline. And keep in mind, I mean, Blizzard told us that the Season of Discovery is actually canon lore, like found memories, things we might not have personally seen ourselves in class.
Weren't the first paladins priests who became combat? Exactly, that's what it is. I mean, it's described in the Liadrin cinematic. He goes like covering up their pain and armor and everything. He describes the transformation of priests into paladins. Yes, all paladins, the original paladins, were first priests. Now, today, people just train as paladins outright from the beginning. They don't have to become a priest and then a paladin. But yes, all the paladins, many of the legendary paladins that we know, originally started practicing as priests.
With our own eyes. We discovered a questline involving Forsaken characters attempting to establish holy orders.
I mean, we basically saw that transformation with Anduin. I mean, Anduin, when we first, if you've been playing this game long enough, you remember like the Mists of Pandaria days and stuff where he was running around with a wand wearing cloth. He was a priest. Anduin was originally a priest, and then he kind of, once he assumed the throne and everything, and his father died, that's when he kind of, class changed into paladin, right? He put on armor, picked up his father's sword, and now he fights more like a retribution or holy paladin at this point.
Now, at Midnight, we actually have more undead NPCs related to the light, and they're related to Alonso's Fowl. As I previously said, you have seen that the Midnight promotional short was literally based in Lordaeron. It showed the interaction between Liadrin and Alonso's Fowl and the Scarlet Crusade. I mean, why would they even show this if it isn't relevant?
Man, it was crazy, you know, if you listen to Alonso's Fowl during the quest line too, how he talks about the Sunwell and how like beautiful it is and all this shit, but he couldn't enter the room because the light burns him so much as an undead person who wields the light. And he talks about the burn and how he's learned to deal with it and everything every time he uses the light. But he talks about if he approached the Sunwell and went into the room, he'd basically be turned to ash. So it's such a crazy thing because he loves the light. He clearly understands it a lot, and he appreciates it and knows how to wield it. But at the same time, just his body like rejects the light, essentially.
Lonsus himself is going to play a role in this, and this introduction of a new Holy Order of Forsaken Paladins is not going to be some minor update they're going to add, but it will probably tie into the main storyline of the entire Light thing, and the patch that will include the Undercity and the Forsaken. When you combine this with the entire Light versus Void battle of Midnight, the Light being so relevant, I'm like 99% certain the Forsaken are going to become Paladins in this expansion. There is just so much more evidence. There is too much more evidence for it to not happen. As I said, it never really made sense in the first place why we have priests but we don't have Forsaken Paladins. And I mean, we already had Undead Paladins in the game, like Sir Zeliek ages in the past, and Forsaken have been wielding the Holy Light for so long as well. So I think this was really just a gameplay thing and a matter of time until they add them. However, Blizzard did confirm that we will get more race class combos in Midnight, but I think based on the evidence, the Blood Elven Druids and Forsaken Paladins so far seem the most likely. Thanks for watching. Check out what we know about
Undead Paladins for sure.
By clicking on the screen, and subscribe to my brand new Witcher lore channel that I just opened by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time.
Yeah, Undead Paladins, I totally see that being a possibility. I mean, it just makes sense too. Like a lot of these people, you got to remember they fell defending Lordaeron. There was Paladins there. And then why is it that after they die and they're raised again as undead, why can't they practice Paladinism again? Why is it that they have to be priests now instead? It never made sense. If an undead person can wield the light, which Alonsus Fowl has described the process of doing that, then it makes sense, you know, they could obviously put on plate, pick up a hammer, and wield the light in that way too. Totally. So nice one overall from Doran here. We'll see if these things actually end up happening.